Alright, so welcome everyone. In further continuation to our previous lesson here, I would like to talk about the source of the velocity field, that is obviously the fluid. The fluid vector velocity field will gonna add the stability as well as the motion to the moving particles, and of course, it will gonna control the all of the magic and the interesting stuff that we just saw in the previous lesson when I just show you up with the play blast. And I also like to show you up that what we're going to end up after going through with this lesson. So here is the video that I've just got the play blast, and these all are the hardware render particles. I just want to say some few words regarding that also. Since in our course we are focusing only upon the software rendering particles, but I must have to say that maybe some of you will like to go with the choice of rendering with the hardware particles because they are also very nice and interesting. They're really going to show a lot of the crispy feel in comparison to the software render particles. And here in front of me, the particle type is the point. I'm not going to use the streak type, but I do acknowledge that if we're going to render up with the software render particles, if we're going to add up some few characteristics of the streak particles, because the tube particles will also going to depend upon their tube length, which is basically the velocity of the particle. The more is the velocity, the more stretchiness in the particles we're going to come up. And here also you can see the particle count is somewhere around a little close to 1,000,000, but we can also increase that up. And we're also going to learn the shading as well as the important utilizations of some few color balance and the attributes of the ramps that we're going to add up a more important stuff to the rendering. Okay, so let's just close that up and start creating the stuff again. So first of all, I would like to select the proxy object, which is the sword underscore proxy. And in the sword underscore proxy, we'll first need to add the fluid. Since we are already done with the fluid container, but we don't have the emitter right now. As you can see here in the attribute editor, we have the fluid transformation node, shape node, and of course the time. We don't have the emitter node for that. And we're also going to play up with some more values of the gradient force as well as the swirl that we're going to add up to the next lesson where we're going to improve these stuff. Okay, and rest is all just same. And one more important thing is that we're going to increase the base resolution from the 10 to the 100 or maybe 90, because this is very fair. I mean the 10 is not somewhere in no position, so we're going to add at least, let's say, a resolution to 90. And we'll need to select the fluid container and the proxy object, and we'll go to the fluids, and under the add edit contents we'll go to the emit from the object, and the object type obviously will going to be the surface. So here we are just focusing upon the density. We don't need to work upon the heat and the fuel, so we can put that thing to off. And of course I don't want that any jitters. However, you may could add if you want to add some more stability to this, but if you really want to add that the jitter, you need to also use the turbulency, but I'm not going to use any turbulence with that. I just want this smooth and consistent flow of the fluids. Since this is an energy reaction, so we're not going to focus upon any of the characteristics of the smoke or the fire, so we'll be focusing only upon the fantasy kind of the energy. All right, so moving further, as you may could see, we have already dipped down the transparency, and yeah, so I'm just going to bring that up, and the ramp of the opacities also, just for the sake of the visibility in the beginning. I would like to see how the fluids are basically reacting, and I think so they are pretty much slow. So why they're pretty much slow? Because it could be because of the buoyancy. So we'll just crank that up to the 25, and just for now I would like to change the dissipations to the 1 only. And again, you don't need to bother about all the attributes of the fluids because they will not ever going to show up in the rendering. We'll just focusing them to create the best particle looking effect, the best magic effect. But just I need to see the reaction. That's why I'm just using them. Otherwise I just don't need the fluid anymore. So okay, so we're gonna again bring the transparency to this, and we're not going to use any opacity graph. All right, that's just pretty much fast and fine. And the resolution, let's say, put that up to the 100 again. And we're not going to use the, okay, I think so I've changed the boundary from both sides to the none, or that's still okay. It's not a problem. All right. So let's just do one thing, put that thing to the none. No use because we're not going to utilize any of the auto resize functions. All right, so moving forward, let's say first we're going to hide up the sword group, or let's say, okay, let's just keep that up in the viewport. What should be the source of the particle emission? Obviously, that has to be the proxy again. So we're going to select the proxy sword, and under the n particles, since in the 2016 the menus have been changed, so I'm going inside the fx and the n particles. I'm going to create the classic particles. So here we can go for the emit from the object again. You're going to find them under the legacy particles. Still powerful, no problem. So emit from the object, and let me just reset the settings. And the basic emitter type will going to be the surface. The rate particle per second has to be too much high. Let's say approximately, okay, I think so this is also going to serve the purpose. Approximately 50,000 particles, or 500,000, sorry. So that's just fine. 500,000 is the number of the rate per second. This is just for the initial testing. Okay, you may come back again and change the stuff, no problem. So we're focusing upon the speed as well, because okay, let's just give the speed, no issues. And with that, we'll do one thing. First of all, just let me go to the fluid and just disable the property, and let me just play the timeline and see what we're gonna get. Oh, the particle doesn't seem to come up. So again, we need to select the proxy object, and where exactly are the particles? I haven't created them, I think so. Okay, so just do one thing to avoid the confusion, just hide the stuff. And again, I'm gonna select them up and go to the end particle. Let's say emit from the object. And okay, I think so by mistakenly that has been gone. So go for the surface type again, and let's say go for the 200,000 particles at this point of time, and let's say create. All right, so here comes the particles. Yes, of course. So you can see that the emitter node is also attached with the sword underscore proxy, and the particles is over here. We're going to name them up. Let's say the rising particles, and also let's say rising fluids, just to differentiate from the two kinds of the particles. And we're going to keep the name emitter as is by default. So if you're going to play up the timeline, you can see that the particles are just coming from the sword, and there's just nothing I could see, just some simple streak of the particles. So what else we like to do? Well, just go to the outliner. We were talking about the important, the velocity field. So the velocity field is really going to be important. So what I can do, I can select the particles, I can select the fields, or vice versa. I can go to the fields under field by solvers, and since there is a lot of change in the menu, so you need to be careful. We need to go and select the connect, and let's say use selected as the no, we need to click here, assign to selected. All right, so now we're going to play the timeline. Okay, because since we haven't utilized the fluid, so again we need to disable that off. And now if we're going to play the timeline, yes, now you can see that the particles are now adhering to the fluids, I guess. All right, so I think so we need to have a little bit more change. So let's do one thing. We're going to address that issue in the next lesson, all right? But for now, we're going to keep them as just for a good start for the emission of the particles, all right? So we're taking this thing into the next lesson.